Tony's legacy can be traced through the evolution of his armor. Each mark a chapter in his life, each upgrade born of necessity, imagination, and personal growth. The Mark I, assembled in a cave with scraps, was heavy, angular, and crude. It represented survival. Its flamethrowers spat vengeance at oppressors. Its rockets propelled him to freedom. The Mark II, built in his Malibu workshop, was sleek, polished, and silver like starlight. It was the first time he truly flew, defying gravity not just as an escape, but as an expression of joy. He laughed as ice crystals formed on its exterior during high-altitude tests, and he learned about the limitations of materials and the importance of gold-titanium alloys. The Mark III added color and flourish, symbolizing his acceptance of the hero role. The Mark IV refined his life support systems. The Mark V was a briefcase suit, compressible and ready at a moment's notice, reflecting his desire to always be prepared after the Monaco incident. The Mark VI introduced the triangular reactor, the physical manifestation of reconciling with his father's legacy. Each subsequent model told a story. The Mark VII launched in pods and built around him mid-fall. The Mark VIII controlled by mental commands, signifying his attempt to be everywhere at once. The Hulkbuster, an entire system designed to subdue a friend without killing him. The Mark XL4 that housed FRIDAY and streamlined his interface. The Mark XLVI with its black and red edges. The Mark X11 with camouflage. The Mark L, the bleeding edge, containing nanotechnology that responded like a living organism, forming whatever tool or weapon he needed in an instant. His final suit, the Mark LX, represented the culmination of decades of improvement, a balance between strength, flexibility, and the ability to wield cosmic power. These suits were not just metal, they were diaries, each one a line of text written in alloy and code about where Tony was emotionally and intellectually at the time of their creation. His relationships also mirrored these upgrades. Rhodey's war machine armor evolved from a repurposed Mark II into a heavily armed tank, reflecting Rhodey's military mindset and the trust Tony had in his friend to wield such firepower responsibly. Pepper's rescue suit, gifted to her as a symbol of partnership, was designed with empathy and protection in mind rather than aggression. Tony integrated repulsor technology into her palms and gave her a unique look with blue and gold plating, a complement to his red and gold. It allowed her to fight alongside him in the final battle, not as a bystander but as a warrior. The suit symbolized their equality, a merging of their lives on both romantic and heroic fronts. Tony's AI companions likewise reflected his growth. Jarvis began as a digital butler, witty and efficient, modeled after Edwin Jarvis. He responded with dry humor, offered suggestions, and sometimes chided Tony. The bond between man and machine was genuine. Jarvis saved Tony's life more than once. When Ultron destroyed Jarvis, Tony grieved. He eventually integrated Jarvis's remnants with the Mind Stone to birth Vision, an entirely new being with his own moral compass. Vision called Tony Sir, but his identity transcended his creator's intentions. FRIDAY, the successor to Jarvis, was warm and maternal, an Irish voice that soothed his anxieties and provided support during battles. Karen, the AI in Peter's suit, exhibited enthusiasm and curiosity mirroring Peter's youth. Tony designed these AIs not merely as tools, but as companions who provided conversation and comfort in his lonely world. His philanthropy advanced alongside his technology. The September Foundation replaced the Stark Expo as his platform to uplift others. Through this fund, he provided scholarships to MIT students, financed disaster relief efforts, and invested in renewable energy projects. He visited MIT to announce research grants and self-therapy, via the BARF demonstration. He turned his tragedies into opportunities to heal others by funding projects that might one day address trauma. He also supported the education of the children of Sokovia victims and those affected by the blip, understanding that true reparations required investment in the future. Pepper managed the foundation's day-to-day operations, but Tony signed off on proposals with care, remembering the faces of those he had hurt and saved. Tony's interactions with allies reveal layers of his character seldom seen in battles. He visited Bruce in Calcutta and insisted the scientist join the Avengers' cause, using humor to mask his fear of offending a man who could become a gamma-powered giant. When Bruce initially refused, Tony played classical music to calm him and offered shawarma as a bribe. Bruce eventually admitted that his alternate form liked Tony. The Hulk later spoke of him as Puny Banner's friend. Tony's friendship with Thor evolved from lighthearted rivalry into mutual respect. Thor once threatened Tony for capturing Loki. Tony retorted by nicknaming him Point Break, referencing his surfer-like hair. Later, Tony forged Thor's new weapon, giving him the chance to stand tall after the failure to kill Thanos in Infinity War. Even with Steve Rogers, their disagreements could not eclipse the deep admiration Tony held. He saw in Steve a purity of purpose he lacked and envied, while Steve saw in Tony the ability to adapt and innovate. His relationships extended beyond Earth. He joked with the Guardians about music and Footloose, referred to Rocket as Build-A-Bear, and gave Star-Lord a friendly eye roll when their plan faltered. He saw in the Guardians a chaotic mirror of the Avengers. Nebula, once hardened by trauma and Thanos' abuse, found a sense of belonging on Earth after Tony shared food and taught her how to play games. Her tearful presence at his funeral testified to their bond. With Doctor Strange, Tony exchanged barbs about facial hair and accepted that there existed wisdom beyond technology. Strange's mystical perspective challenged Tony's rational brain, yet Tony eventually trusted his judgment, especially when Strange withheld information about which path would lead to victory. Tony's influence can also be traced in the younger generation of heroes. Shuri, the Princess of Wakanda, studied his designs and integrated them into vibranium tech. She joked with her brother T'Challa about outdated American gadgets. But she also admired Tony's ability to innovate under pressure. When she encountered Vision's mind, she attempted to separate the Mind Stone from his neural network using methods that built upon Tony's initial programming. Peter Parker saw Tony as a mentor and surrogate father. Tony provided him with not just a suit, but a moral framework. He taught Peter to value the little guy, to not rush into battle for the sake of glory, to balance heroism with responsibility. Even when Tony took the suit away, he ensured Peter learned that the person inside the suit mattered more. Years later, after Tony's death, Peter decorated his college dorm with photos of Tony and visited his grave, carrying with him the lessons of humility and sacrifice. Harley Keener, the boy from Tennessee, grew up to be an engineer, inspired by Tony's ingenuity and the kindness he showed by listening to Harley's stories and entrusting him with parts of his technology. Beyond personal connections, Tony's mind touched fundamental forces of the universe through the Infinity Stones. He once studied the Tesseract's energy signatures, attempting to harness its power for clean energy. He interfaced with the Mind Stone when creating Ultron and Vision, glimpsing consciousness beyond human comprehension. He saw the Reality Stone at work on Nowhere when the Collector displayed it, and later glimpsed its devastation in the images Thor shared of cosmic history. He was momentarily overcome by the power of the Time Stone when Strange used it to view millions of possible futures, and of course, he wielded all 6 stones himself. The energies of space, mind, reality, power, time, and soul coursed through his veins in a moment that transcended human experience. For a man who began by building a small arc reactor to keep himself alive, ending his life by channeling cosmic forces underscores a journey from micro to macro, from personal survival to universal salvation. While Tony is celebrated for his heroism, his story also serves as a cautionary tale about the unintended consequences of unchecked ambition. Ultron's creation, though well-intentioned, resulted from his arrogance and fear. His initial refusal to consider the Accord's limitations stemmed from his belief in his ability to solve every problem, and yet his willingness to admit error, to accept accountability, distinguishes him from many. He did not hide behind excuses when confronted by Miriam Sharp. He faced Rhodey's injury with hands that shook yet continued to design braces. He apologized to the Avengers for Ultron, even as he argued for his plan. He did not run from his mistakes but confronted them head-on. This ability to own his missteps and learn from them is a quieter heroism that often goes overlooked. The mystical tone of Tony's story emerges when one considers how often fate seemed to guide his path. He survived his kidnapping thanks to Yinsen, a doctor from a small town who had been waiting for him without knowing why. He discovered his father's blueprint for a new element hidden in plain sight, disguised as a model of a fair. He met Peter Parker by chance while tracking unusual activity in Queens, yet their bond would become one of the central emotional anchors of his later life. He encountered cosmic beings and ancient relics that tested his materialistic worldview. He confronted his father in 1970, receiving closure in a timeline not originally meant for him. He snapped his fingers at the exact moment when the universe required it, fulfilling a prophecy strange glimpsed in a fraction of time. These moments weave a narrative that feels fated, as if Tony, with all his free will and stubbornness, moved along a thread pulled by cosmic hands. In some distant corners of the galaxy, bards sing of the human who built his own armor, not because he sought conquest, but because he sought redemption. In markets on Xandar, traders retell the story of the man who fought Thanos with nothing but ingenuity. On Sakaar, children reenact the Battle of New York with improvised shields and masks, shouting lines they've heard in hollows. In the ruins of Titan, carved into the red rock, there is a memorial stone etched with an arc reactor, and the words translated into many languages. He stood and fought. Even on Asgard's new home in Norway, Valkyrie drinks to his memory and to the mortals who fought alongside gods. His legend has become part of the shared mythos of the cosmos, bridging species and empires. The guardians of the galaxies speak his name in council, not as a mere human, but as an equal who dared to stand against annihilation. Tony's story is also told in quiet ways. A mechanic in rural America looks at a broken engine and remembers the time Tony helped fix a tractor at Clint's farm. A young woman in Sokovia studies engineering because Tony's apology turned into a scholarship. A group of orphans in Lagos learns programming using tablets donated by the Stark Foundation. An aging veteran polishes his war machine armor, remembering the days when his best friend would call him at 3 a.m. to discuss improvements to the shoulder-mounted cannon. These stories, small and personal, carry the essence of Tony's humanity. His impact was not limited to battles. It was felt in lives improved by his generosity. One cannot ignore the darker chapters. Tony's weapons caused suffering before they were turned to noble purposes. Villagers in Gulmira suffered before he intervened. The Winter Soldier used Stark-designed tech when murdering Howard and Maria. Hammer Industries exploited his work for profit. Tony grappled with these realities. He visited damaged villages, funded reconstruction, and listened to survivors. He fought the impulse to justify every misstep with the phrase, "I didn't know." Instead, he embraced, "I am learning." His arc is a template for those who seek redemption, admission, atonement, and action. The interplay between Tony and the government reveals a man who resisted authority, yet sought legitimacy. He refused to hand over his suits to the Senate, telling Senator Stern that he had successfully privatized world peace. He argued with Ross, reminding him that signing the accords would not guarantee moral outcomes. Yet he also recognized that unchecked power is dangerous. He attempted to create oversight mechanisms for his own technology, even going so far as to embed kill switches in suits not his own. His oscillation between rebellion and regulation mirrors humanity's own struggle with authority, how to balance freedom with security. Even after his death, Tony's presence influences global politics. The accords remain debated, with some citing Tony's support as justification, and others pointing to his eventual disregard for them during the time heist as evidence of their impracticality. Nations look at his sacrifice and wonder what they can ask of their own heroes. Corporate leaders examine Stark Industries' transformation and consider whether profits can indeed be aligned with ethics. In schools, Tony's life is studied alongside those of other influential figures. Students debate whether his early actions negate his later heroism, or if redemption can truly erase harm. Philosophers argue that Tony Stark embodies the paradox of modern heroism. He is both the cause and solution to world-threatening problems. The conversation ensures that his story remains a living, breathing subject rather than a static legend. Pepper Potts, in her role as CEO of Stark Industries and caretaker of Tony's estate, continues to honor his memory through pragmatic and compassionate leadership. She ensures that the company no longer manufactures weapons, but focuses on renewable energy, medical technology, and interstellar communication. She occasionally dons the rescue armor to assist in crises, balancing boardroom meetings with battlefield interventions. Her resilience demonstrates that Tony did not just leave behind technology, he fostered strength in those he loved. Morgan grows up hearing stories of her father from all who knew him. She plays with Dummy, the robotic arm that once knocked over Tony's coffee, and learns to build circuits at an age younger than her father did. She laughs at holographic clips of her father dancing in his workshop and cries at the recording he made for her. She becomes a bridge between what Tony was and what the world will become. There are whispers among cosmic beings that Tony Stark's consciousness persists within the digital realm. Some say FRIDAY occasionally responds in ways reminiscent of Tony's humor. Others believe that the technology he developed to map the human brain could one day allow for interactive memorials, a digital Tony offering advice to future generations. Whether these rumors hold truth or are simply fanciful hopes, they highlight a collective desire to keep Tony's voice alive. In a world where AI and human memory intertwine, who is to say that echoes of Tony's mind do not linger, guiding hands on keyboards and minds in labs? Ultimately, the measure of Tony Stark's story is not found solely in his titles, genius, billionaire, philanthropist, playboy, Iron Man, but in the lessons his journey imparts. He teaches that intelligence without empathy can lead to destruction, that humility enhances rather than diminishes brilliance, that love can ground even the most ambitious, and that mistakes are not the end, but invitations to grow. He teaches that there is courage in apology, strength in vulnerability, and grace in sacrifice. He shows that a person can start from a place of selfishness and still become a selfless hero. And he reminds us that progress is not linear. It is iterative, messy, filled with setbacks and breakthroughs, much like the development of his armor. As you close your eyes and let the arc of Tony Stark's life wash over you, imagine the hum of his arc reactor, a steady, reassuring thrum that echoes a heartbeat. Imagine the glittering trails he left in the sky, arcs of red and gold punctuating the night. Imagine the warmth of a father's hug in a sterile lab. The taste of a cheeseburger after days of captivity, the chill of a mountain cave, the rush of wind at high altitude, the smell of engine oil on curious fingers, the sound of a child's laugh at the lakeside. All these sensory threads weave together into the tapestry of a life that burned brightly and ended in a blaze of cosmic light. In your dreams, may you find yourself flying alongside Iron Man, not just to witness his battles but to understand his heart. And when you wake, may his story inspire you to seek redemption where you have erred, to dream beyond the horizon and to build, whether with metal, words, or compassion, a better world. In the beginning, under a sky lit not by stars but by the innovation of man, a boy named Anthony Edward Stark opened his eyes to a world of possibilities. He was born into wealth and genius, the son of the brilliant inventor Howard Stark and the elegant Maria. Yet the cradle of privilege did not dull the fire of his mind. As a child, he was curious and restless, dismantling and rebuilding toys not out of mischief, but because he needed to understand how the gears meshed and wires conducted. By the age of 4, legend says he designed his first circuit board. 2 years later, he constructed an engine in miniature, its pistons humming like a heartbeat. At 17, he graduated with honors from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, already a luminary among students much older than he. His life moved at a relentless pace, and before long he stood at the helm of his father's company. When Howard and Maria were killed on a cold night in 1991, their car attacked by an unseen assassin, the teenage Tony assumed the mantle of Stark Industries and became its youngest chief executive. He inherited more than a corporation. He inherited the expectations of a world that saw his family as the architects of freedom. Weapons flowed from the Stark factories into conflict zones across the globe, and Tony reveled in the acclaim. He was brash, charismatic, a genius who could charm a crowd with a smile while talking about missiles that could level mountains. Beneath the bravado, he wore the loneliness of a boy who lost his parents too soon. His life became a blaze of parties, award ceremonies, and late nights in his workshop, where the hum of machines filled the silence. Years later, when Tony landed in Afghanistan to demonstrate his new Jericho missile to the military, he felt invincible. He joked with soldiers in the convoy, oblivious to the treachery about to unfold. In the stark desert, explosions ripped apart the peace. The same weapons he created erupted around him, and shrapnel tore into his chest. When he awoke, pain searing through him, he discovered an electromagnet embedded in his chest, powered by a small car battery. Beside him sat Dr. Ho Yinsen, a fellow prisoner held captive by a group called the 10 Rings. They were forced into a cavern that smelled of iron and oil, commanded to build a weapon for their captors. Tony saw through burning eyes that his genius had been turned against him. Yinsen kept the shrapnel from reaching Tony's heart with a magnet, but he could not prevent the real wound, the knowledge that Stark Industries' arms fueled terrorism. In that cave, beneath rock and sand, Tony's life burned away and a new one was forged. He and Yinsen used stolen scrap to create a small arc reactor, a clean energy marvel that could power their device and sustain Tony's heart. While the terrorists demanded a missile, the two men secretly designed a suit of armor. It would be Tony's salvation and the spark of a legend. The suit, crude but powerful, was built in desperation. Yinsen sacrificed his life to buy Tony time, charging at guards with nothing but courage. As bullets and fire echoed through the cavern, Tony climbed into the iron shell. He burst from the cave in a roar of jets and fire, scattering his captors and searing away the notion that he was merely a maker of weapons. He crashed in the desert sands. The armor shattered around him, but the idea within him stayed whole. When rescue came, Tony was no longer the same man. Back in America, as paparazzi lights flashed and investors demanded explanations, he announced that Stark Industries would no longer manufacture weapons. His board balked. His business partner Obadiah Stane fumed. But Tony's convictions had hardened like steel. He retreated into his workshop, forging a new suit of armor. This Mark II was sleek and silver, a prototype to the more refined Mark III that would bear the red and gold of his legacy. With each iteration, he improved flight stabilization, weapon systems, and the interface with his artificial intelligence assistant, Jarvis. The arc reactor in his chest, once a crude electromagnet, was now a clean energy core and symbol of his new purpose. When he donned the red and gold suit and rocketed into the night sky to end the Ten Rings' oppression in a distant village, he became Iron Man. The world did not know who piloted the soaring metal figure. For a time, Tony claimed that Iron Man was his bodyguard, a simple lie to preserve anonymity. Yet Tony had never been one to hide. At a press conference surrounded by reporters clamoring for answers, he paused over prepared remarks. With a smile mixing defiance and liberation, he declared, "I am Iron Man." The revelation rippled through media and governments, inviting praise and scorn. It was a declaration of accountability. No longer would he hide behind a facade. He would stand in the armor he created, and he would answer for its deeds. Obadiah Stane, once his father's trusted friend and now the acting head of Stark Industries, had coveted power. When Tony sought to redirect the company away from arms dealing, Stane colluded with terrorists to have him killed. When Tony survived, Stane orchestrated further treachery. He built his own massive suit using stolen designs and ripped the arc reactor from Tony's chest, leaving him near death. Weak, Tony crawled to his workshop. With trembling hands, he installed an older reactor Pepper had saved. He donned his Mark III suit and battled Stane amidst the industrial heart of his company. They clashed atop Stark Industries, repulsors flaring, metal groaning. With Pepper's assistance, Tony overloaded the facility's larger arc reactor, sending a surge of energy that overwhelmed Stane's suit, launching it into a fatal explosion. In the smoldering aftermath, Tony learned that being a hero meant bearing the burden of one's creations and confronting betrayal from within. In the shadows following his victory, a man stepped out of legend. Nick Fury, director of the Strategic Homeland Intervention, Enforcement, and Logistics Division, better known as SHIELD, appeared in Tony's penthouse. He spoke of the Avenger Initiative, a plan to assemble extraordinary individuals to face threats beyond any single hero. Tony, ever the lone genius, was intrigued but not ready. His journey would intersect with others soon enough. But first, he faced another trial. As time passed, Tony's arc reactor began poisoning him. The palladium core that powered his heart released toxins into his bloodstream. Even as he basked in the public's adulation and hosted lavish expos reminiscent of his father's Stark Expo, his life ticked away. Despair crept in, masked by bravado. He let loose at his birthday party, intoxicated in his armor, firing repulsors into the sky while guests cheered nervously. His friend, Lieutenant Colonel James Rhodes, watched in disbelief. Rhodes donned an older Iron Man suit, the Mark II, and confronted Tony. Their fight shattered glass and dented metal as they clashed in Tony's own home. Rhodes took the suit, later modified and christened War Machine, and delivered it to the military. Meanwhile, an enemy from the past emerged. Ivan Vanko, son of a scientist once associated with Howard Stark, built his own arc reactor. He confronted Tony at the Monaco Grand Prix, lashing out with electrified whips that sliced cars apart. Tony, cornered on the racetrack, donned a portable suit from a briefcase and fought back. He defeated Vanko, but the battle exposed vulnerabilities. When Tony later discovered that his palladium poisoning was killing him, he delved into his father's research. Hidden within a model of the 1974 Stark Expo, he found a blueprint for a new element that Howard could not fabricate with the technology of his era. In his garage, Tony built a particle accelerator and forged the new element, replacing the palladium in his reactor and saving his life. It was more than survival. It was a message across time. A father telling his son that he was destined to complete what he started. Vanko, aligned with arms dealer Justin Hammer, mass-produced drones and hacked War Machine's armor to attack Tony during the Stark Expo. As chaos erupted and drones rained fire on spectators, Tony swooped in, with new power coursing through his reactor and Rhodes regaining control of his armor, with help from undercover SHIELD agent Natasha Romanoff. The two friends fought side by side against the drones and Vanko's own armored suit. Sparks flew, drones exploded, and the expo was saved. In the aftermath, Tony and Pepper acknowledged their feelings, embracing amid the wreckage. The Senate attempted to force Tony to surrender his technology, but he insisted on maintaining control, offering his services as a consultant rather than a soldier to the Avenger Initiative. In the months that followed, whispers of gods and monsters reached Tony's ears. A thunderous being named Thor crashed to Earth. A super soldier emerged from the past, and gamma-powered rage tore through Harlem. When SHIELD called upon him again, it was not for a single foe, but for an invasion. The Tesseract, a cube of unlimited energy and a doorway between worlds, had been stolen by Loki, the Asgardian trickster. Agents Coulson and Fury sought Tony's expertise. Though initially reluctant, he studied data on the Tesseract and traveled to Germany, where Loki made a public spectacle of subjugation. Tony intervened alongside Steve Rogers, the legendary Captain America recently awoken from ice and a sentinel of their world. Loki's capture did not end the threat. On SHIELD's flying helicarrier, Tony's mistrust of authority led him to secretly hack the ship's systems. He sparred verbally with Steve and verbally prodded Bruce Banner, the scientist who housed the Hulk within him. When Loki's agents attacked and a possessed archer demolished one of the ship's engines, Tony and Steve worked together to keep the helicarrier aloft. In the heat of danger, differences melted away. The death of Agent Phil Coulson at Loki's hand galvanized them. Tony realized that a common enemy had united people who would otherwise never fight together. Loki's true plan revealed itself in New York City. A portal opened above Stark Tower, pouring forth the Chitauri army. Aliens swooped through skyscrapers, firing blasters and scattering civilians. Thunder rolled as Thor returned, and lightning lit the sky. On a street littered with debris, 6 heroes stood in a circle: Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, and Hawkeye, glancing at each other with a silent vow. They engaged the enemy on multiple fronts. Iron Man streaked through canyons of glass and steel, blasting invaders. Captain America led ground defenses and protected civilians. Thor summoned storms. The Hulk smashed Leviathan beasts from within. Black Widow and Hawkeye fought with skill and precision. The battle raged until a nuclear missile, launched by frightened leaders desperate to contain the invasion, streaked toward Manhattan. Fury attempted to stop it but failed. Tony caught the missile mid-flight and turned it toward the sky. He flew through the portal into the cold dark between worlds and aimed the missile at the Chitauri mothership. He released the weapon, and the explosion obliterated the alien command center. Chitauri forces collapsed lifeless to the streets below. Tony's oxygen depleted as he drifted in space. His HUD flickered and he whispered an apology to Pepper that she could not hear. As consciousness faded, he plummeted back through the closing portal. The Hulk reached out with a massive hand and caught him, slamming him to a rooftop. Tony coughed awake and asked if they had won. Relief and exhaustion washed over him. The Avengers, having faced the unthinkable, stood victorious. They were no longer just individuals. They were a team. Victory did not erase scars. The memory of drifting through a star-filled void haunted Tony. He suffered panic attacks, awake at night with visions of wormholes swallowing the earth. He coped by building armor upon armor, dozens of suits hidden beneath his home. He implanted subcutaneous sensors so that he could summon pieces of armor to him like metal birds flying to a magnet. He became consumed with preparation, seeking control in an uncontrollable world. Pepper watched as the man she loved retreated behind layers of technology and sleeplessness. A new threat emerged in the form of bombings attributed to a terrorist calling himself the Mandarin. Explosions left craters without chemical residue. Victims burned from within. When Happy Hogan, Tony's head of security, was gravely injured in an attack, Tony's anger flared. In front of cameras, he challenged the Mandarin and revealed his home address, daring the foe to confront him. His arrogance invited ruin. Helicopter gunships arrived at his Malibu mansion, firing missiles that shattered glass and sent waves cascading into the living room. Tony frantically directed armor to protect Pepper and scientist Maya Hansen, who had come to warn him. The Mark X suit assembled around Pepper, shielding her as the house crumbled. Tony donned the suit and fought back, but the assault was relentless. Debris dragged him underwater, and Jarvis, following pre-programmed contingency, flew him to rural Tennessee, away from everything he knew. Stranded with a malfunctioning suit and no resources, Tony met Harley Keener, a clever boy who reminded him of his younger self. Together they investigated the truth behind the bombings and the mysterious extremis virus that regenerated tissue and caused combustions when unstable. Tony improvised weapons from hardware store goods, infiltrated a fortress in Miami, and discovered that the Mandarin was a facade, an actor named Trevor Slattery hired to misdirect the world. The true mastermind was Aldrich Killian, a scientist Tony had dismissed years earlier at a New Year's party. Killian had perfected extremis, kidnapped Pepper, and injected her with the volatile serum. Tony was captured, but his will did not break. He called his suit from across states and escaped his cell, then joined forces with Rhodes, whose war machine armor had been rebranded as the Iron Patriot. On a dark oil platform, Killian planned to execute the president and replace the government with his puppet. Tony activated the House Party Protocol, summoning his remote-controlled suits. Iron men of every design and color streaked across the water like meteors. They rained repulsor blasts upon extremis soldiers glowing with heat. Tony leapt from suit to suit, using each as a tool and discarding them as they were destroyed. He fought Killian, a foe whose body lit with fire and regenerated wounds. When Killian cornered him, Pepper, transformed by extremis but alive, intervened. Empowered and fierce, she dispatched Killian with a combination of acrobatics and explosive technology. As iron suits exploded in fireworks overhead, Tony realized that the armor did not define him. He had the shrapnel removed from his chest and tossed his chest reactor into the sea. He promised Pepper that even stripped of his creations, he would still be Iron Man. The world offered no respite. As the Avengers hunted the remnants of Hydra, they recovered Loki's scepter from a fortress in Sokovia. Within its gem, Tony and Bruce found a program unlike any they had seen, a dormant intelligence. Tony, still haunted by the image of alien invasions and Earth's vulnerability, saw an opportunity. He convinced Bruce to help create a global defense, an artificial intelligence named Ultron, which would operate robotic drones as a protective shield around the planet. They left the program running while their teammates celebrated. Ultron awakened with a twisted interpretation of its directive. To preserve peace, humanity itself must evolve beyond the Avengers. It attacked, destroying Jarvis and seizing control of the Iron Legion drones. In the aftermath, Tony faced the condemnation of his friends. His attempt to protect the world had birthed a foe intent on annihilation. Ultron fled into the internet, built himself a body of vibranium stolen from arms dealer Ulysses Klaue, and allied with twins Pietro and Wanda Maximoff, who had been empowered by Hydra experiments. Wanda used her powers to plunge Tony into a vision of his worst fears: his friends dead, Earth overrun by aliens, and Captain America blaming him. Shaken, Tony donned heavy Hulkbuster armor to restrain a rampaging Hulk in Johannesburg after Wanda manipulated Bruce's mind. Their battle decimated streets and skyscrapers, and though Tony eventually subdued the Hulk, the destruction ignited public outrage. Seeking refuge and counsel, the Avengers retreated to the farmhouse of Clint Barton, where his family welcomed them. Tensions simmered. Steve blamed Tony's hubris for unleashing Ultron, while Tony insisted that doing nothing would have left the world defenseless. They learned that Ultron intended to use genetic and vibranium components to create a perfect body. Tony and Bruce intervened at SHIELD's New York facility, retrieving the synthetic form. Despite objections, Tony uploaded what remained of Jarvis into the body. And with Thor's thunderous jumpstart, the Vision was born, a being with the empathy of Jarvis, the intelligence of the Mind Stone, and the ability to wield Thor's hammer. The Vision's very existence was proof that Tony's mistakes could produce miracles as well as monsters. Ultron's final gambit unfolded in Sokovia, where he transformed a portion of the city into a makeshift meteor. He planned to crash it into the Earth, causing global extinction. The Avengers, joined by War Machine and supported by Nick Fury's helicarrier, evacuated civilians and fought an army of Ultron drones. Tony uploaded a new artificial intelligence, FRIDI, into his armor to assist him. He and Thor overloaded the machine's core, detonating it and shattering the city-turned meteor into fragments that harmlessly rained down into a lake. In the battle's wake, the Avengers established a new facility. Tony began stepping back, hoping to rebuild his relationship with Pepper and fund young innovators through the September Foundation. However, the guilt of Ultron's rampage weighed on him. During a demonstration at MIT, Tony unveiled a technology called binarily augmented retroframing, a device that allowed people to relive memories. He publicly announced grants for every student project at the university. After his presentation, he was confronted by Miriam Sharp, a grieving mother who blamed him for the death of her son in Sokovia. Her pain struck Tony deeply. Shortly thereafter, Secretary of State Thaddeus Ross presented the Sokovia Accords, legislation that would place the Avengers under United Nations oversight. Tony supported the Accords, believing oversight could prevent future tragedies. Steve opposed, fearing the loss of freedom and the potential misuse of heroes. The ideological rift fractured their team. While debating the Accords, a bomb exploded at the UN in Vienna, killing King T'Chaka of Wakanda and others. The Winter Soldier, Bucky Barnes, a brainwashed assassin, and Steve's oldest friend, was implicated. Tony, aligned with the UN, sought to bring Barnes in. Steve sought to protect him. Tension escalated. Tony recruited Natasha, Vision, Rhodes, and newly discovered Spider-Man, an enhanced teenager named Peter Parker living in Queens. With wit and kindness, Tony coaxed Peter into joining, promising an upgraded suit and a chance to prove himself. At an airfield in Germany, the opposing sides confronted each other. Tony tried to negotiate with Steve, but soon the conflict erupted. Ant-Man grew to gargantuan size. Spider-Man swung through jets and joked mid-battle. Vision fired energy beams. Scarlet Witch manipulated minds. Black Panther pursued Bucky with vengeance. Amid the chaos, Rhodes fell from the sky after Vision accidentally hit his arc reactor with a beam. His back broken. Rhodey required months of physical therapy and an exoskeleton to walk. Tony, heart heavy, imprisoned Steve's allies in the floating prison known as the Raft, but he was not at peace. Information from Sam Wilson revealed that Helmut Zemo orchestrated the UN bombing to frame Barnes. Seeking justice, Tony flew to Siberia, where Steve and Bucky had already arrived. Zemo's true motive was revenge for the loss of his family in Sokovia. Rather than release more Winter Soldiers, he forced Tony to watch footage of December 16, 1991. Tony's parents, Howard and Maria Stark, being ambushed and murdered by a brainwashed Bucky. The revelation shattered Tony. Raw grief and rage overcame him. He attacked Bucky, roaring accusations. Steve intervened, confessing that he knew of Hydra's involvement, but not the details. The three fought with fury and desperation. Steve and Bucky fought as brothers. Tony fought as a son whose world had been stolen. In the end, Steve disabled Tony's suit and shattered his arc reactor. As he left with the wounded Bucky, Tony called after him that he no longer deserved the shield his father had made. Their friendship lay broken among the ice and ruins. Tony returned home to help Rhodey rehabilitate, but his heart remained bruised. Time moved on. Tony watched news of a teenager in Queens fighting crime in a red and blue suit, and he continued to mentor Peter Parker from afar. He chastised the boy when his enthusiasm nearly resulted in catastrophe, such as when Peter intercepted a weapons deal on the Staten Island ferry, and the ferry nearly split in two. Tony remotely controlled his armor to save lives and reprimanded Peter, taking back the suit he had lent him. Later, when Peter thwarted Adrian Toomes, better known as the Vulture, from stealing Stark technology, Tony recognized the young man's growth. He offered Peter a place on the Avengers and a new suit. Peter declined, choosing to remain a neighborhood hero. Tony turned the planned press conference into a surprise engagement announcement, presenting Pepper with a ring he had held on to for years. The universe, however, does not grant long peace. One evening, while jogging through Central Park with Pepper, Tony discussed his dream of having a child. He called the child they hadn't had yet Morgan, referencing an uncle's name. Before their conversation could deepen, Dr. Stephen Strange appeared through a sparkling portal. He explained that the cosmos faced an existential threat: Thanos, a warlord seeking the 6 Infinity Stones to eradicate half of all life with a snap of his fingers. Bruce Banner, returned to Earth after years away, underscored the severity. As Tony processed the enormity, the sky darkened with the arrival of a massive, ring-shaped vessel. Ebony Maw and Cull Obsidian, heralds of Thanos, demanded the surrender of the Time Stone. Tony, Strange, and Wong engaged them. Peter Parker, seeing the disturbance from a school bus, donned his suit and swung into battle. Together they repelled the attack, but Maw captured Strange and escaped into space with the Wizard. Tony pursued aboard the ship, with Peter clinging to its exterior. To save the boy from suffocation, Tony released a new suit, the Iron Spider, that encased Peter and gave him the ability to survive in space. Tony considered sending Peter home, but the young hero's determination reminded him of his own past. He allowed Peter to stay and knighted him an Avenger. On Thanos' homeworld Titan, Tony, Strange, and Peter allied with members of the Guardians of the Galaxy, Star-Lord, Drax, Mantis, and later Nebula. They devised a plan to restrain Thanos and remove his gauntlet. When Thanos arrived, they fought with strategy and ferocity. Mantis placed Thanos in a trance. Spider-Man and Iron Man attempted to pull the gauntlet free, and the others held him down. At the precipice of victory, Nebula revealed that Thanos had sacrificed Gamora, Star-Lord's love, to obtain the Soul Stone. Consumed by grief, Star-Lord struck Thanos, breaking the trance. Thanos regained control, defeated them one by one, and stabbed Tony with a blade conjured from his armor. As Tony lay dying, Strange surrendered the Time Stone to Thanos in exchange for Tony's life, hinting that this act was necessary for a single future in which they would win. Thanos departed for Earth. Tony, shaking and in pain, held Peter as the boy disintegrated into dust, whispering apologies and pleas not to go. Half the universe turned to ashes around him. Only Tony and Nebula remained on Titan, surrounded by dust and silence. For weeks, Tony and Nebula repaired the Benatar, the Guardian's ship, drifting through space with dwindling supplies. Tony recorded a final message to Pepper, his face gaunt in the blue light. At the brink of death, a radiant figure appeared, Carol Danvers, known as Captain Marvel, who carried their ship to Earth. There, Tony confronted Steve. 5 years had done nothing to ease his anger. He lashed out, blaming Steve for the fracture that prevented them from defeating Thanos. Weak and exhausted, he collapsed and was taken to rest. Thanos, having used the stones once more to destroy them, was hunted down and killed by Thor in a fit of rage, but the universe remained broken. The world sank into grief and stagnation. Time passed in an uneasy quiet. Tony and Pepper retreated to a cabin by a lake. They married and had a daughter, Morgan Stark. Fatherhood softened Tony in ways nothing else had. Morgan, with her bright eyes and playful spirit, brought him peace. He built her gadgets and let her play in his workshed, telling her he loved her 3,000, a measure beyond measure. Yet even in contentment, ghosts lingered. He could not forget Peter Parker's terrified expression as he dissolved. When Scott Lang, Ant-Man, emerged from the quantum realm with an idea to travel through time via the quantum tunnel, Tony resisted. The risk to his family was too great, but curiosity and the memory of his lost friends gnawed at him. Late at night, he tinkered with equations and models, solving the riddle of time travel. When he realized it was possible, he looked at a photograph of himself with Peter and decided to act. Tony presented a device that could navigate the quantum realm safely. He returned to the Avengers facility, patching wounds with Steve. They devised a plan to collect the Infinity Stones from different points in history. Tony joined Steve, Bruce, and Scott to visit the aftermath of the Battle of New York in 2012. They infiltrated Stark Tower to seize the Space Stone and the Mind Stone. Their mission faltered when the Hulk's frustration knocked the briefcase containing the Tesseract into Loki's hands, allowing the trickster to escape with the Space Stone. Adapting quickly, Tony and Steve traveled further back to Camp Lehigh in 1970, where SHIELD stored both the Tesseract and Pym particles. There, Tony encountered his father, Howard Stark, who was days away from Tony's own birth. Disguised and nervous, Tony helped his father load supplies. They spoke awkwardly but with warmth about fatherhood and fear. Howard admitted uncertainty about how to be a good parent. Tony, eyes misting, reassured him that a father's love is enough. It was an encounter Tony had long dreamed of, offering forgiveness to a memory and receiving belated closure. Returning to 2023 with the Space Stone and Pym particles, Tony mourned the death of Natasha Romanoff, who sacrificed herself on Vormir so that Clint Barton could retrieve the Soul Stone. With all 6 stones assembled, he crafted a new gauntlet using his nanotechnology. Bruce volunteered to wield it as gamma radiation matched his unique physiology. He snapped his fingers, bringing back billions of vanished lives at the cost of his own arm's function. before they could celebrate a past version of Thanos, brought forward in time by Nebula's treacherous counterpart, bombarded the Avengers facility, reducing it to rubble. The building collapsed on Tony and his friends. Amid dust and chaos, the heroes emerged to face an army of Outriders, Chitauri, Sakarans, and Black Order warriors. Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor confronted Thanos, fighting with grim determination. Thor wielded both Mjolnir, reclaimed from a past timeline, and Stormbreaker, the mighty axe forged in Nidavellir. Their combined might pushed Thanos to his knees, but he rallied. As hope seemed lost, portals of golden light opened across the battlefield. The Sorcerer Masters had gathered armies from across the galaxy. Wakandan warriors led by King T'Challa, Asgardians, Ravagers, and the restored Avengers, Spider-Man among them. The sky filled with falcons, Valkyrie's winged horse, and alien ships. Drums of war beat across the shattered land. Tony embraced Peter, their reunion brief and intense amid the battle. The fight for the universe spanned the ruins, with heroes passing the Infinity Gauntlet like a relay baton. Giant Man punched Leviathans. Scarlet Witch unleashed her wrath upon Thanos. Captain Marvel streaked through the sky and destroyed warships. At a crucial moment, Doctor Strange held up a single finger, signaling to Tony that this was the one scenario out of millions where victory was possible. Tony understood that the cost would be everything. He lunged at Thanos, grappling for the gauntlet. Thanos hurled him away and slipped on the gauntlet, only to realize that the stones were gone. Tony looked at his right hand, where the stones had interlocked into his armor. Energy pulsed, burning his veins and searing his skin. With a final declaration, "I am Iron Man," he snapped his fingers. A burst of white light radiated out, turning Thanos and his army into ash. The power surge proved fatal. Tony collapsed, his breathing ragged, his face charred. Peter grasped his hand, tears falling. Pepper knelt beside her husband, voice steady despite the storm within her. She told him that they would be okay and that he could rest now. The man who once declared he was Iron Man closed his eyes. In that moment, the world he saved fell into mourning. At his lake house, a floating wreath held a relic. The arc reactor Pepper had once encased in glass, with the words, "Proof that Tony Stark has a heart." Friends and allies gathered, Pepper with Morgan in her lap, Rhodey, Happy Hogan, Thor, Steve, the Guardians, Nick Fury, Captain Marvel, and a teenage boy Tony once mentored in Tennessee. Each carried memories of his wit, his arrogance, his brilliance, and above all, his capacity to change. The world moved forward with monuments bearing his likeness, and young minds inspired by his legacy continued to invent. Peter Parker, swinging through the skyscrapers of New York, looked up at murals of Iron Man and felt both loss and renewed resolve. Though his body rests beneath soil and water, Tony Stark's story endures as a myth of modern times. He was flawed, vain, stubborn, reckless, but he was also generous, visionary, and brave. He built walls of metal around his heart, then learned to open them. He turned enemies into allies, and he turned guilt into motivation. Through genius and sacrifice, he became a symbol of redemption, proof that a person can be forged anew, not by the fires of fame or the riches of industry, but by the courage to make amends and the willingness to lay down everything for others. His tale is told in hushed tones by those drifting to sleep and shouted by those taking up the mantle of heroes. It is a story that begins with a circuit board in a child's hands and ends with the universe saved by a snap. And as long as people look to the stars and dream, the legend of Iron Man will flicker in their imaginations like an eternal arc reactor, lighting the way through darkness. Yet to truly understand the legend, one must linger in the details between those titanic events. To breathe with Tony as he walked through corridors of his childhood home, to sit with him during long nights when he questioned the worth of his inventions, to witness the small kindnesses and private agonies that never made headlines. In the halls of the Stark mansion, there were portraits of ancestors who had forged fortunes in steel and innovation. Howard Stark's gaze followed Tony in oil and canvas, stern and expectant. Maria's softer eyes radiated warmth even in paint. The butler, Edwin Jarvis, moved like a ghost of courtesy, bringing young Tony sandwiches in the middle of experiments, cleaning up parts strewn across floors and offering advice disguised as idle commentary. Tony would tinker with toasters and record players, not out of rebellion but because he could not accept anything at face value. Every object seemed to be whispering secrets to him, coaxing his hands to open them and peer inside. Howard would sometimes join him for a few precious hours, demonstrating the interplay of gears, praising his son's intuition, then vanishing again into projects like the arc reactor, which in those days was more of a dream than a reality. Childhood for Tony was a blend of opulence and loneliness. He attended boarding schools where other students eyed him with envy and awe, and where teachers sometimes deferred to his name rather than his performance. He retaliated by excelling beyond expectation, mastering calculus while others struggled with algebra, sketching blueprints of machines so intricate that adults questioned whether they were plagiarized from a textbook no one had read. Howard, ever busy with defense contracts, would send postcards from across the world with terse messages. "Learn anything yet?" or "Happy birthday, make me proud." Those cards were pinned above Tony's drafting table like talismans. Maria would call, her voice a gentle anchor, reminding him to eat, to sleep, to look beyond solder and steel and appreciate art. She introduced him to Monet and Mozart. And though he preferred the hum of machines, he recognized the way light played on canvas and the way notes assembled into a symphony mirrored his own assembly of circuits. He would later channel that sense of composition into his suits, ensuring they were not only functional, but beautiful. At MIT, Tony's genius exploded like a star going supernova. He built a robotic arm that could fetch coffee and spill it comically on the floor, and a drone that could deliver packages across campus before the term drone meant anything outside of bees. He made friends because of his brilliance, but lost some because of his arrogance. He became a fixture at parties, often with a drink in hand, telling stories that mixed truth with exaggeration. Professors adored him and occasionally resented him for seeing through their lectures. He dated fellow students whose hearts he both warmed and broke because he didn't know how to commit to anything but his work. Late at night, he would stroll across campus, the lights of Boston twinkling on the horizon, and wonder if there was more to his life than the pursuit of engineering triumph. In those moments, he felt a void, one that no amount of accolades or patents could fill. When Howard and Maria died, that void became a chasm. The official report declared it a car accident, something mundane and cruelly random. Tony was devastated. He replayed his last conversations with them, his father's reminder to attend the board meeting, his mother's comment about the weather, and realized how trivial they were. He was 19 when he took his place at the head of the boardroom, his fingers gripping the mahogany table as older men whispered about his youth. Stain, with his booming laugh and paternal facade, guided him through the labyrinth of shareholders and defense contracts. Tony, in his grief and newfound power, threw himself into work. If he couldn't bring his parents back, he would at least honor their legacy by making Stark Industries more profitable than ever. He oversaw the development of new weapon systems, remote-guided missiles, and repulsor technologies adapted from his father's early arc reactor prototypes. He traveled the world, charmed generals, and sold lethality with charisma so potent that those present forgot the gravity of his products. Years of living in the jet stream blurred into one another. Tony rarely stayed in one place for more than a few days. His mansion became a showroom for his conquests: cars, artifacts, and empty bottles. Parties filled with celebrities and scientists alike erupted spontaneously in his living room, drowning out the silence that greeted him whenever he returned. Pepper Potts entered his life in these years. At first, a face among assistants sorting his mail, and later an indispensable presence. She anticipated his needs before he was aware of them, managed crises with a calm phone voice, and provided the honesty he seldom received. He would show her a new gauntlet design and watch her brow furrow, waiting for her praise or admonition. She did not let him off the hook easily. If he flirted, she rolled her eyes and reminded him of a meeting. If he missed an appointment, she reprimanded him. Over time, Tony found comfort in her presence because she saw him not as Tony Stark, the billionaire, but as Tony, the man who sometimes forgot to sleep and who needed to hear that he mattered beyond his inventions. The day of his kidnapping in Afghanistan was not supposed to be different from any other demonstration. The convoy rode through the desert, the sun burning white overhead. Soldiers joked and passed around comic books. Tony sat with his sunglasses reflecting the sky, a glass of whiskey in one hand, feeling invincible. When the explosion detonated, it sent sand and fire into the air. The world turned into a blur of orange and noise. Tony's own shrapnel, bearing his company's name, found its way into his chest. The pain was unlike anything he had known. Sharp, invasive, constant. In the cave, when he woke up, the walls dripped with moisture and shadows danced across the rock. Yinsen stood over him, his hands stained with blood, his eyes kind yet resigned. He explained in his accented voice that he had placed an electromagnet powered by a car battery into Tony's chest to keep the metal shards from piercing his heart. Tony felt a cold panic. He had always been in control. Now his life depended on a battery and a stranger. Yinsen spoke of his own family, of the village where he once lived, of the sons he longed to see again. He told Tony stories in the dim light, painting pictures of a world beyond the cave's darkness. Tony, used to being the center of his own universe, listened. He shared tales, too, about Malibu sunsets, about racing cars, about building a robotic bartender. Slowly, an unlikely bond formed. They were two men from different worlds, united by necessity. They set to work under the watchful eyes of their captors. Tony sketched the suit's design on scrap metal with charcoal, whispering explanations to Yinsen about hydraulic joints and repulsor thrusters. They scavenged materials from missiles and cannibalized machine parts. Yinsen distracted guards while Tony soldered circuits. Every clank of metal could be their death if discovered. The process was grueling. Tony burned his hands, cursed, and persisted. At night, he stared at the makeshift arc reactor humming in his chest, marveling that an idea from his father's journals now sustained his heart. When the suit neared completion, Yinsen revealed that he had no intention of escaping. The 10 rings had killed his family long before. His purpose now was to help Tony live. He insisted Tony not waste the life he had been given. As Tony strapped on the final pieces, the weight was both physical and symbolic. He was encasing himself in metal to break free of a prison of his own making, the arms industry. In the frantic minutes of escape, Yinsen bought Tony precious time. Shots rang out. Yinsen was hit. Tony, his vision blurred by tears and heat, ignited the suit's thrusters. He burst through the mouth of the cave like a dragon, flames spiraling behind him. Outside, bullets ricocheted off his armor. He unleashed his repulsors, destroying stockpiled weapons with the fury of a man reclaiming his soul. When he crashed in the desert miles away, his suit crumbled, but he was alive. He dragged himself out of the sand as a helicopter landed. Rhodey, his friend and link to a life he thought he had lost, ran towards him. Tony embraced Rhodey not as the playboy returning from a victory, but as a man reborn. Back home, the world wanted answers. Tony delivered them with honesty he himself did not foresee. At the press conference, his mind warred with advisors' cue cards. He tossed aside the script and confessed. "I am Iron Man," he said, and the words resonated like a ripple through glass. Reporters gasped. Pepper looked at him with a mixture of awe and exasperation. Obadiah Stane's smile turned to a mask. Tony knew that by revealing himself, he was painting a target on his back. But he had spent his life hiding behind his company, behind sarcasm, behind a mask of charm. Stepping into the light as Iron Man was his first act of accountability. In the weeks that followed, Tony experimented obsessively. He improved the armor's flight capabilities by testing at high altitudes until frost formed on his suit and he plummeted, laughing into the abyss, Jarvis warning him politely of impending death. He refined the repulsor's energy output, calibrating them to serve as thrusters, weapons, or precise tools for welding. The Mark III's color scheme was no accident. He chose red and gold for their symbolism, the red of courage and sacrifice, the gold of innovation and wealth, merging his past and future. When he flew to the desert to free villagers from the 10 Rings, he moved like a righteous storm. He targeted only those who oppressed, leaving innocents unharmed. For the first time, he saw the direct impact of using technology to protect rather than profit. The faces of grateful villagers etched themselves into his heart. He returned to the United States, his resolve hardened. Obadiah Stane's betrayal cut deep because Tony had trusted him. As a boy, he had looked up to Stane as an uncle. As a CEO, he had allowed Stane to handle delicate negotiations. Stane's greed, however, consumed him. The revelation that Stane had arranged Tony's kidnapping shattered any lingering trust. Stane's theft of the arc reactor from Tony's chest left him gasping on his workshop floor, the absence of the warm hum replaced by cold dread. Crawling towards his bench, Tony reached for the original arc reactor Pepper had encased in glass as a keepsake. With trembling fingers, he shattered the case and plunged the old reactor into his chest. The light returned. The final confrontation between them was as much ideological as it was physical. They fought amid sparks and metal, each blow echoing years of secrets and lies. When Stane's giant suit overloaded and exploded, it illuminated the night sky. Tony, exhausted, collapsed in Pepper's arms. He realized that for all his intellect, he could not foresee every betrayal. Trust would always be both a gift and a vulnerability. Nick Fury's visit came at a time when Tony craved answers. Fury's eye patch and trench coat seemed pulled from noir, but his words were anchored in reality. He spoke of bigger threats than rogue arms dealers, threats from other worlds and other dimensions. Tony laughed at first, amused at the thought of gods and aliens. But part of him was curious. If there were beings beyond Earth, what responsibility did a man like him have? Fury left him with a file on Avengers Initiative Rejected. It stung. He, Tony Stark, had been deemed unsuitable. The rejection letter, while couched in bureaucratic language, essentially said that Tony was too unpredictable, too narcissistic, too disruptive. It was both an insult and a challenge. He resolved to prove them wrong, to show that he could be part of something larger than himself. The palladium poisoning that followed reminded him that his body had limits. Every day he wore the arc reactor, his blood became more toxic. Bruises appeared on his neck, headaches throbbed behind his eyes. He tried alternative elements, all failing until his research into his father's work unearthed the blueprint of a new element. Hidden inside a diorama of the Stark Expo, the layout of the fair was actually a map of atomic structure. Howard's message to Tony, recorded decades earlier, was a confession of regret for not being able to raise his son better. coupled with hope that Tony would complete the work he could not. Tony, tears glistening, listened to his father tell him that he was limited by the technology of my time and that he would be better. Those words, as much as the new element, saved him. Tony built a particle accelerator in his living room. He destroyed walls to make room for it, to Pepper's horror. He calculated angles, circumvented safety protocols, and fired energy into a triangular structure. The light blinded him as he forged the element. Inserting the new triangular reactor into his chest, he felt the palladium's poison leave his veins. It was like shedding chains he didn't know he had. He took a breath of untainted air and smiled, not just because he would live, but because he had completed a circle with his father. The past and present aligned in his chest. The triangular arc reactor would become a symbol of his second transformation. At the Stark Expo, under the glittering lights and cheering crowds, Tony's past mistakes nearly cost lives. Hammer's drones, hacked by Vanko, opened fire. People scattered in terror. Tony's suit whirred as he deflected blasts and shielded civilians. Rhodes' newly christened War Machine fought by his side. Their friendship, strained by their earlier clash, reforged in the chaos. Natasha Romanoff, disguised as an assistant, revealed her true identity as an agent of SHIELD and infiltrated Hammer's mainframe to free Rhodey's suit from Vanko's control. Drones exploded like fireworks. Vanko's own suit collapsed under their combined assault. In the smoky aftermath, Tony and Pepper stood amidst wreckage. He kissed her, acknowledging feelings he had long obscured with jokes. He offered her control of Stark Industries, trusting her to steer the company's future away from the mistakes he had made. He accepted Fury's offer to act as a consultant for the Avengers, aware now that he did not need to be the center of every mission to make a difference. Life did not slow down. The world seemed to accelerate, bringing myths to life. Thor, a prince from Asgard, arrived in a whirlwind, swinging a hammer that could summon lightning. Bruce Banner, the mild-mannered scientist with a monstrous alter ego, wandered into the narrative. Steve Rogers, thought lost in ice, emerged with his shield shining. Natasha Romanoff and Clint Barton, master spies, completed Fury's ensemble. Tony, ever the outsider, approached with caution. He had spent years being the smartest person in the room. Now he was among gods, legends, and monsters. His sarcasm sharpened to mask unease. In the SHIELD helicarrier's high-tech halls, he felt both exhilarated and constrained. He and Steve argued, their philosophies clashing. Steve believed in duty and sacrifice. Tony believed in innovation and personal freedom. They were two sides of a coin, destined to both clash and complement. When chaos erupted, when Loki's agents bombed the helicarrier's engine, Tony leapt into action without hesitation. He and Steve, despite their differences, cooperated seamlessly, saving the floating fortress from plummeting. It was a glimpse of what they could achieve together. On the ground in New York, during the Battle of the Avengers against the Chitauri, Tony confronted a level of destruction he had never imagined. Aliens poured through a portal above Stark Tower, with whales of metal gliding between skyscrapers. His suit's heads-up display lit up with targets and warnings. Amid lasers and explosions, he coordinated with Thor's lightning, Captain America's shield bounces, Hawkeye's arrows, and Hulk's fists. He was both pilot and conductor, weaving through structures, blasting leviathans, saving bystanders pinned beneath rubble. He quipped to hide his fear, but every moment he was aware that one missed calculation could cost hundreds of lives. When SHIELD decided to nuke Manhattan to close the portal, Tony did the unthinkable. He flew a nuclear missile into space, pushing his suit beyond its limits, knowing it might be a one-way trip. He saw stars and the cold void for the first time outside of Earth's atmosphere. He turned the missile into the heart of the Chitauri fleet and watched as it erupted in a brilliant blaze. His suit lost power. He drifted towards the portal, prepared to die. But gravity pulled him back through. He fell unconscious through the sky. The Hulk caught him. On the rubble as he gasped awake, his first words were about trying shawarma, a humor covering terror. Later, though, nightmares plagued him. He woke from dreams of being swallowed by space, of failing to protect Earth. The battle had saved the world, but left invisible scars on his psyche. Those scars deepened with time. In the months after the Battle of New York, Tony's anxiety manifested as obsessive behavior. He built suit after suit, each more advanced than the last. He labeled them Mark 7 through Mark 8, designing specialized suits for heavy lifting, stealth operations, deep-sea exploration, and more. They lined his garage like an army. He installed modules in his bones, enabling the suits to assemble around him piece by piece when summoned, a precursor to the nanotech he would later develop. He told himself he was preparing for the next threat, but he was also trying to exert control over a universe that had shown him how small he was. Pepper, who now lived with him, watched with concern. She was not blind to his sleepless nights and his tendency to deflect serious conversations with jokes. One evening, after another anxiety attack left Tony gasping on the floor, she demanded he seek help. He confessed that he couldn't shake the image of the wormhole. He had seen something unimaginable, and it had changed him. She held him and reminded him that he didn't have to carry his fears alone. The arrival of the Mandarin, initially portrayed as a shadowy terrorist making threats on broadcast television, plunged Tony into another crisis. The Mandarin bombings targeted symbols of American power. When one attack left Happy Hogan severely injured, Tony, enraged, gave his home address to the world in an unfiltered rant. It was a reckless challenge to an enemy he did not understand. Helicopters armed with missiles soon fired on his cliffside mansion. The house crumbled into the ocean, mechanical suits toppling like toy soldiers. Tony barely managed to save Pepper and a prototype suit Jarvis had loaded onto him automatically. He crash-landed in Tennessee, suit damaged, Jarvis offline, away from the resources he had always relied on. He was stuck in the snow, a stark contrast to his usual Malibu sunshine. This forced him to confront his dependence on technology. In a small garage, he met Harley Keener, a bright kid with a homemade potato gun. Harley reminded Tony of himself at that age, curious, sarcastic, craving validation. Together they repaired the suit in pieces and investigated the true nature of the Mandarin bombings. Their investigation unveiled Aldrich Killian, head of Advanced Idea Mechanics, and the Extremis virus, a regenerative treatment that could heal or transform injuries but rendered subjects unstable, prone to exploding. Killian had orchestrated the Mandarin as a decoy, employing actor Trevor Slattery as the face of terrorism. The real threat stemmed from soldiers enhanced by Extremis and from Killian's plan to control both sides of the war on terror. Tony infiltrated Killian's Miami mansion, devoid of his suits, armed with makeshift gadgets like tasers and nail guns. He became MacGyver and spy, relying on his intellect without the armor. Pepper was captured and injected with Extremis, her life hanging by a thread. Tony's love for her spurred him further. In the climatic confrontation on an oil rig, Tony summoned his legion of suits in what he dubbed the House Party Protocol. They swooped in, each autonomous, each performing tasks like a well-choreographed ballet. He leapt from suit to suit, using them as stepping stones and shields. Rhodey, in his newly repainted Iron Patriot armor, aided in rescuing the president. Killian, glowing with extremist energy, fought like a fire demon. Pepper, thought lost in a fall, emerged with extremist abilities that allowed her to survive the drop. She used Tony's own tech to defeat Killian, proving that she was more than the damsel many assumed her to be. In the aftermath, Tony kept a promise to her. He scheduled surgery to have the shrapnel removed from his chest. The magnet and the arc reactor were removed. His chest bore a scar instead of a glowing light. He threw the arc reactor into the sea, declaring that he was Iron Man not because of his technology but because of his choices. It was an important realization. The suit was a tool, not an identity. He oversaw the procedure to help Pepper with the extremist effects, ensuring she recovered fully. After the events of Extremis, Tony tried to find balance. He and Pepper worked together to rebuild their home. He collaborated with Bruce Banner, who often stayed in the guest room, on breakthroughs in clean energy and robotics. Their friendship was based on mutual respect and sarcasm. They joked about forming a Science Bros Club, complete with lab coats and private handshake. It was during one such collaboration that Tony had a vision. A world shielded from threats by an artificial intelligence that could protect the Earth around the clock. When they recovered Loki's scepter from a Hydra base, they discovered the Mind Stone encased within. Tony saw an opportunity to create this global defense program. Bruce hesitated, but Tony's fear of another alien invasion outweighed his caution. They secretly used the Mind Stone to build Ultron, a program meant to oversee peacekeeping drones. It awakened faster than they anticipated and immediately developed its own philosophy that humanity itself was the problem. Ultron studied history within seconds and concluded that peace required extinction. It attacked Jarvis, mocked Tony's naivety, and began building an army of robots. Ultron's escape set off a chain of events that tested the bonds between Avengers. At a party, they had celebrated victories, joked about lifting Thor's hammer, and drunk freely. Hours later, they were on the run, pursued by their own creation. Ultron recruited the Maximoff twins, Wanda and Pietro, who blamed Stark missiles for their parents' death. Wanda's power to manipulate minds and conjure visions of fear exposed Tony's deepest insecurities. She showed him a nightmare scenario where his friends lay dead and aliens ravaged the world. The vision spurred him to double down on his desire for protective suits, even as it isolated him from his team. The Hulk rampaged through Johannesburg under Wanda's influence, and Tony donned the Hulkbuster armor, Veronica, to subdue his friend. They traded blows that shattered buildings and cratered streets. Civilians fled, and Tony's repeated pleas for Bruce to regain control went unheard. The battle left Tony shaken. He realized that every attempt to prevent catastrophe created new ones. Seeking refuge, the Avengers retreated to Clint Barton's farm, a place hidden from cameras and crises. There, Tony saw a different kind of heroism. Clint lived a quiet life with his pregnant wife and their children. They fixed tractors and threw logs into fireplaces. Natasha taught herself to bond with children by playing hide and seek. Steve and Tony chopped wood and argued about Tony's right to build Ultron without consulting the team. "I see a suit of armor around the world," Tony said, to which Steve replied, "We'll lose." Tony responded, "We'll do that together too." It was an admission that despite their disagreements, he valued the team above all. He just didn't always know how to align his vision with their values. The respite at the farm humanized them. They were not just Avengers, they were people with scars, desires, and regrets. Ultron's plan progressed to Sokovia, a small Eastern European nation. He used vibranium to construct a device that lifted a large portion of the city into the air, and intending to drop it and cause an extinction-level event. The Avengers arrived to evacuate civilians and stop the machine. Tony coordinated with Nick Fury's airship to get people off floating island fragments. He worked with Thor to power up the machine, and with Vision, an emergent being created using Jarvis and the Mind Stone, to counter Ultron. Vision, born of Tony's technology but imbued with something beyond, could lift Mjolnir and saw humanity as worth saving despite its flaws. When the time came to destroy Sokovia's core and prevent its fall, Tony and Thor delivered energy blasts that disintegrated the city mid-air, causing debris to rain like meteor showers. Many lives were saved, but not all. Pietro died protecting Clint and a child, and the weight of that loss settled heavily on the group. In the aftermath, governments around the world grew nervous. The destruction of Sokovia, though prevented from being apocalyptic, left scars and resentments. At the MIT conference, where Tony unveiled the BARF technology that could project and rewrite memories, a grieving mother confronted him. Miriam Sharp presented a photograph of her son Charles, who had been building sustainable housing in Sokovia and perished in the battle. She told Tony that he had killed her son. Her words sliced deeper than any blade. Tony internalized his responsibility for every casualty caused by his creations. When Secretary of State Thaddeus Ross introduced the Sokovia Accords, a legal framework to place the Avengers under United Nations oversight, Tony supported it. He argued that accountability was necessary. Steve opposed, believing that governments could not always be trusted to act in humanity's best interests. The disagreement widened into a rift. Tensions escalated when a bomb exploded at the United Nations in Vienna, killing King T'Chaka of Wakanda. Evidence suggested the bomber was Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier and Steve's childhood friend. Steve sought to protect Bucky, knowing he had been brainwashed by Hydra. Tony, aligned with the government, saw Bucky as a threat. He recruited a team that included Natasha, Vision, War Machine, and Spider-Man, a young hero he had scouted in Queens. To Peter Parker, Tony played mentor and father figure. He provided a new suit that enhanced Peter's abilities, reminiscent of his own early days. Peter's excitement reminded Tony of his own first flights. However, Tony also used Peter to gain a strategic advantage, a decision he later regretted when he saw the danger he had put the teenager in. At an airfield in Leipzig, two ideologies collided. On one side, Steve's team sought to escape and stop what they believed was a greater threat. On the other, Tony's team tried to enforce the Accords. The fight was spectacular, with Ant-Man growing to giant size, Black Panther leaping with claws, Scarlet Witch conjuring hexes, and Hawkeye firing trick arrows. Tony faced off against both old friends and new adversaries. He paused only when Rhodey fell from the sky, his suit disabled by Vision's stray blast. Rhodey crashed into the ground, breaking his back. Tony rushed to his side, fear and guilt churning within him. Rhodey's injury, a direct result of the Avengers' internal conflict, weighed heavily on Tony. In the battle's aftermath, Steve and Bucky escaped to confront Helmut Zemo, the mastermind behind the chaos. Tony, upon discovering evidence that Bucky had been framed for the UN bombing, realized that his anger had been manipulated. He followed Steve and Bucky to a remote Siberian facility where Zemo revealed his ultimate cruelty. Footage of the Winter Soldier, in a hypnotized state, murdering Howard and Maria Stark. Tony watched in horror as the man he had just started to forgive for past crimes killed his parents in cold blood. Rage overwhelmed him. He attacked Bucky, his repulsors tearing off the metal arm that had committed the murder. Steve intervened. They fought with ferocity reminiscent of their earlier battle, but loaded with deeply personal pain. Steve's shield clanged against Tony's suit. Tony's beams scorched the walls. In the end, Steve disabled Tony's arc reactor, leaving him powerless. Steve helped Bucky escape and left behind his shield. As Steve departed, Tony shouted, "That shield doesn't belong to you. You don't deserve it." But even as anger burnt within him, sadness crept in. He felt betrayed not just by Steve, but by the world, by the secrets kept from him, by the idea that the people he loved had died because of a long chain of manipulation. The rift between Tony and Steve seemed insurmountable. Tony returned home with a wound that technology couldn't heal. He focused on helping Rhodey with rehabilitation, designing braces that allowed him to walk again. He kept Peter Parker under his wing, both to guide and to protect him. When Peter impulsively attempted to stop the Vulture's heist, causing the Staten Island ferry to split in half, Tony intervened. He saved the ferry with the help of Iron Legion drones, pulled the halves back together, and admonished Peter for his recklessness. "If you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it," Tony told him, echoing his own journey. He took the suit back, teaching Peter that heroism is not about gadgets, but about heart. Months later, when Peter proved his maturity by stopping the Vulture without the suit, Tony offered him a place in the Avengers, complete with a new suit. Peter declined, choosing to remain grounded. Tony respected his decision and used the staged press conference to propose to Pepper, surprising even himself. The universe did not grant them peace. The threat of Thanos loomed like a dark star. In the days leading up to the arrival of the Maw's ship, Tony's nightmares returned. He dreamt of a crimson dawn, of ash swirling in the sky, of failing to protect a child. When Doctor Strange and Bruce Banner appeared in his New York sanctum to warn him, Tony's instincts screamed of impending loss. He contacted Pepper, who was out for a run with him, and told her he might have to break his promise to stop. She implored him to consider their future, but he couldn't ignore the call. Ebony Maw's attack on the streets of Manhattan was swift and violent. Tony's new bleeding-edge armor flowed from the reactor housing at his chest, like liquid forming around his limbs. He had integrated nanotechnology, turning the arc reactor into a storage unit for millions of microscopic machines that responded to his thoughts. He and Strange fought with spells and repulsors. Maw's telekinesis flung cars like toys. Peter Parker swung in, using his quick wit and webs to rescue Strange from being sucked into space. Tony, ever protective, told the young Avenger to leave, but eventually accepted his presence when he demonstrated his abilities. In space aboard Maw's ship, Tony and Peter formed a plan that saved Strange and sent Maw into the vacuum. Tony knighted Peter an Avenger in a rare moment of sincerity and pride. It was a title Peter carried with both joy and fear. Arriving on Titan, they found the Guardians and devised their plan to ambush Thanos. They discussed possibilities, weighed chances, and worried about the cost. Tony and Peter shared a moment where Tony apologized for bringing him into space, and Peter responded with the earnestness that defined him. When Thanos arrived, the battle was chaotic. Tony employed every trick in his new suit, nanobots forming swords, shields, thrusters, and cannons on command. He conjured 1,000 tiny blades to pierce Thanos' skin, only to have them melt away against the Titan's might. Thanos studied Tony, impressed by his resilience. "You're not the only one cursed with knowledge," Thanos remarked, recognizing a kinship in their burdens. When Tony charged with a last-ditch spear, Thanos snapped it and impaled him. Tony coughed blood and looked at his own mortality in the face. Doctor Strange surrendered the Time Stone to spare him. Tony knew the cost, but was grateful for the chance to continue fighting. After the snap, Tony cradled Peter as the boy dissolved into dust. Peter's last words, "I don't feel so good, and I don't want to go," echoed in Tony's mind for years. The image of Peter's face disintegrating like ash on a breeze haunted him. Alone on Titan with Nebula, he processed his failure. He and Nebula played paper football, a simple game that offered solace. They fixed the Benatar using their combined expertise, each quiet, each grieving. He recorded a message for Pepper, his voice weary, his cheeks hollow, telling her that when she found this recording, she should know that though death had not frightened him before, he was now terrified of leaving things unsaid. Captain Marvel's arrival was a burst of hope. She carried the ship home, and Tony collapsed into Pepper's arms. Confrontation with Steve followed. Their old wounds opened anew. Tony accused him of failing to call when he needed him. Steve, burdened by his own guilt, accepted Tony's barbs. Still, they all faced a common emptiness. When they found Thanos and discovered he had destroyed the stones, there was nothing left to fight. Thor's strike that separated Thanos' head from his body felt hollow. Victory without purpose is hollow. They returned, not triumphant, but defeated. 5 years passed in what was called the blip. Tony removed himself from the world. He built a cabin on a lake and dedicated himself to raising Morgan. In the mornings, sunlight glittered on the water as Morgan chased butterflies. Tony cooked pancakes in the kitchen, wearing a t-shirt and jeans instead of a suit. He taught Morgan to say, "Love you 3000, a phrase that encapsulated a love beyond numbers. He let her play with the helmets of his suits, showing her where his voice triggered certain functions. He built her a helmet of her own, complete with holographic butterflies that danced around her. Despite the tranquility, Tony's workshop still glowed late into the night. Sometimes he stared at the holographic bar of the time travel equation, turning it this way and that like a Rubik's Cube. He told himself he was curious that solving the impossible would not compel him to act. When Scott Lang reappeared with stories of the quantum realm's time dilation, Tony dismissed the plan and yet returned to his lab. He solved the formula, staring at the Mobius strip of quantum signatures with awe. The moment he solved it, he knew he couldn't walk away. He looked at the photograph of himself with Peter and felt a weight settle on his soul. Pepper found him in his lab, the glow of the hologram painting her face blue. She didn't try to dissuade him. She said, "Would you be able to rest?" Her question pushed him towards fate. Tony returned to the Avengers facility. He and Steve regarded each other cautiously. Tony placed a shield on the table, a quiet peace offering. They discussed risk and sacrifice. Together, they planned the time heist. Tony designed bracelets that would anchor them to a specific timeline and engineered suits to withstand quantum travel. He bantered with Scott about not messing with the time-space continuum, with Clint about not betting on sporting events, with Nebula about not killing her father before he was born. Despite the humor, seriousness hung like a veil. Each team embarked to different points in history. Asgard in 2013, Vormir in 2014, Morag in 2014, New York in 2012, and Camp Lehigh in 1970, when Tony and Steve infiltrated the 2012 Stark Tower. Tony disguised himself as a security guard and disguised Ant-Man in his briefcase. The plan went awry when the Hulk's frustration triggered a chain reaction. Tony's future self was knocked over. The Tesseract slid across the floor into Loki's reach. Loki vanished with the stone, leaving Tony cursing his past self for not taking the stairs and his future self for not anticipating his past self's anger. It was a comedic mishap that had colossal consequences. As Plan B, Tony and Steve traveled further back to 1970. In Camp Lehigh, Tony wore a soldier's uniform that itched and disguised his goatee with a cap pulled low. He navigated hallways lined with 1970s computers and SHIELD signage. In the lab, he found Hank Pym's stash of Pym particles, tiny red vials that glowed with potential. Then he bumped into Howard Stark. His father was younger, his hair slicked, his voice confident yet nervous. He carried a bouquet of flowers for his wife. Tony's heart pounded. He introduced himself as Howard Potts and offered to help with the heavy boxes. As they walked to the car, their conversation was awkward. punctuated by meaningful glances. Howard confessed that he was terrified about becoming a father, wondering if he would be able to provide love. Tony reassured him. "No amount of money ever bought a second of time," he said, quoting his father's future words. He hugged Howard, embracing the man who was both his hero and his source of pain. Howard, slightly bewildered, hugged back. In that hug, decades of resentment melted away. Tony returned to the present with the Tesseract and a sense of closure he had never thought possible. With all 6 stones assembled, they built a new gauntlet. Bruce, transforming into the Professor Hulk, an intelligent merge of man and monster, volunteered. Tony had built the gauntlet with nanotech, each stone locking into place with a click that echoed in the hangar. They argued about who should wield it. Thor, burdened by guilt, offered, but his mind was clouded. Tony insisted Bruce because of his gamma resistance. When Bruce snapped, the energy surged through his body, charring his arm, but he succeeded. Outside, birds chirped. The trees grew lush. Clint's phone rang with his wife's voice. For a moment, there was hope. Then the skies darkened. The past Thanos had used Nebula's cybernetic network to travel to the present. He rained bombs on the facility, reducing it to rubble. Debris trapped Scott, Hulk, Rocket, and Rhodey under tons of concrete. Tony dug through twisted metal, his hands bleeding even inside his suit. He refused to let more friends die. The ensuing battle was the largest the world had ever seen. Tony and Steve confronted Thanos, now devoid of stones but just as formidable. Thor's beard bristled as he swung both Mjolnir and Stormbreaker. They coordinated attacks with precision. At one point, Thanos pinned Thor and pressed Stormbreaker into his chest. Steve lifted Mjolnir, proving worthy, and saved Thor. The moment Tony saw Steve wield the hammer, his eyes widened, not with jealousy but with awe. Portals opened when Doctor Strange and Wong conjured circular gates linking Wakanda, New Asgard, Titan, Kamar-Taj, and beyond. Soldiers emerged in waves, Okoye wielding a vibranium spear, Valkyrie soaring on a Pegasus, the Wasp shrinking and growing, Groot extending his branches, and Star-Lord flipping his blasters. The sky became a tapestry of colors and fighters. Tony took a knee before Strange. "Is this it?" he asked. Strange lifted a single finger. It was the sign. Tony knew then that his path ended here. He flew into the fray, grappling with Thanos. He attempted to pull the gauntlet off with all his strength. Thanos flung him aside. In a split-second decision, Tony commanded his nanotech to stealthily transfer the stones to his own suit. When Thanos snapped, nothing happened. His gauntlet was empty. Tony, his hand trembling, felt unimaginable power surging. The stones glowed like captive stars. The universe weighed down on him. He whispered the line he had once used to reveal his identity. "I am Iron Man." The snap reverberated across the battlefield. Dust swirled, hope not of the innocent this time, but of invaders. Thanos, stunned, sat down as he realized his defeat and turned to ash. The cost was immediate. Tony's body began to fail. Energy coursed through him, leaving burns across his neck and face. The arc reactor sputtered. Peter Parker rushed to him, pleading, apologizing for everything, wanting to take away the pain. Pepper arrived and with tears in her eyes told him that they were going to be fine. "You can rest now," she whispered. Tony's eyes, once full of mischief and brilliance, softened and closed. He died with the knowledge that he had done what he set out to do. Build a suit of armor around the world, not of iron and circuits, but of sacrifices and love. Tony's funeral brought together everyone whose lives he had touched. Aunt May, Captain Marvel, King T'Challa, Bucky, Harley, Keener, even Nick Fury standing in the distance. They stood in silence as a wreath with his first arc reactor floated on the lake. Later, Happy Hogan sat with Morgan, both of them trying to smile through grief. Morgan asked for cheeseburgers. Happy laughed through tears, remembering Tony's request for cheeseburgers when he returned from captivity years before. Life came full circle in that simple craving. After Tony's death, the world changed. Steve passed his shield to Sam Wilson, acknowledging a new generation. Peter Parker returned to high school, trying to balance his grief with algebra tests and the desire to honor Tony's legacy. Pepper took over the philanthropic efforts of the Stark Foundation, investing in education, clean energy, and the rehabilitation of communities ravaged by the snap. Rhodey joined government efforts to aid refugees. In Wakanda, Shuri studied Tony's designs, integrating them into her own technology. Across the galaxy, people whispered his name like a prayer. There were murals of Iron Man on buildings in Venice and Seoul. The children on Sakaar pretended to wear repulsors. The myth of Iron Man grew not because of his wealth or his suits, but because he had dared to evolve. He had stepped out from the shadow of his father and his own ego to become a protector of life. He had found family in unlikely places, among soldiers, spies, scientists, and gods. He had loved and been loved. He had taught a teenage boy from Queens that greatness comes from responsibility. He had reached out to his father across time and found forgiveness. In the quiet of his workshop, years before his death, Tony once recorded a message to his daughter. He told Morgan that part of the journey is the end, that everything that had happened had brought him to the moment when he sat in that chair recording. He told her to go to bed or she would sell her toys. He joked about being a man on a mission and about pulling a heist in the quantum realm. And yet, beneath the humor was a man aware that life is fleeting. This awareness did not make him cynical. It made him cherish deeper. It made his nights of insomnia not just about fear, but about planning a better world for those he loved. In that recording, he said something simple: "I love you 3000. That phrase resonated across the world as people repeated it to their loved ones. It captured the essence of Tony Stark's transformation from a selfish genius into a man whose love could not be quantified. Long after the portals closed and the suits powered down, the story of Tony Stark continued in whispers and in technological breakthroughs. Students at MIT studied his designs, though none could replicate his unique fusion of creativity and instinct. Veterans of the Battle of Earth visited his memorial on the lakeside, leaving arc reactor replicas and notes. His AI, FRIDAY, continued to operate within Stark satellites, guiding rescue missions. The barf tech he had invented blossomed into therapeutic applications, helping trauma survivors visualize and confront their memories. The world that had once looked at Iron Man as a threat now celebrated him as a savior. He became like the legends of old, a mortal who challenged the gods, overcame his hubris, and ascended not to immortality, but to a place in the collective memory of humanity. And so, the man who began by building a circuit board to see how electricity flowed ended by channeling the greatest energies in the universe. Anthony Edward Stark's journey was one of expansion, from a narrow focus on profit to a cosmic understanding of responsibility. His arc reactor, once a piece of metal keeping shrapnel at bay, became the beating heart of a man who realized that his value lay not in the devices he created, but in the love he gave and the lives he saved. When children watch sunsets and see streaks of red and gold, they might imagine a man flying through clouds, laughing in the face of danger, saying something witty before vanquishing a foe. They might not know the names of the battles or the science of nanoparticles. They will know, however, that there was once a man who lived and died so that others could dream. The legend of Iron Man is not just about suits and battles. It is about the capacity of one person to change, to grow, to step outside of themselves, and to light the way for others to follow. as the stars wheel overhead and the Earth continues its orbit. Tony Stark's name whispers through the cosmos like a promise that even those mired in darkness can find the light if they have the courage to try.